like if you're a Dalit, if you're a woman, if you're a kid, life is already hard for you. On top of that, you add this icing, of learning disorder. And there is
She's going through
research
that.
that says that women underreport their symptoms when they are even when they get, forget women who are not getting access to mental health. I am different turns to मुझ में कुछ
कमी
गलत
है।
है, मुझ में कुछ खोट है. I'm a खोटा सिक. So
आसपास हमारे इतने फ्रेंड्स आके मुझे बोलते हैं कि आई गॉट डायग्नोस्ड विद ADHD, या फिर मुझे लगता है कि मुझे ADHD है, बट इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? व्हाट डज इट रियली मीन टू हैव ADHD?
it's not a very recent phenomena. Like it goes all the way back up to the 1900s. So from let's say from 1902 till like late 80s or something like that, it was always about that one restless kid and a man, like male kid. And especially when we talk about ADHD at more detail, we'll see that how it manifests very differently in men and women, right? Even today, when you read the definition of ADHD, it's always characterized by the behavior, say restlessness, forgetfulness, attention nahi dete, insubordination, things like that. But the true cause of ADHD isn't known yet. Of course, there are genetic angles to it. Of course, there are neurological angles to it. There is a trauma angle to it. Generally, I would say it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means it's something that happens to you when your brain is young, it's forming. On neurological level, they say, again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, but from my research, how we all have these pleasure centers in our brain, right? So the way they work is every time you're happy, the hormones are released, these happy hormones are released, there's dopamine. It's like it gets secreted and there are receptors that absorb it and you get the pleasure or you get the feeling of reward or accomplishment. But they say that in people who have conditions like ADHD and autism, basically neurodivergent people, it's not like there's no dopamine in your brain. There's enough dopamine, but there aren't many receptors to absorb it. That's the reason in most cases whenever you get diagnosed with ADHD, they put you on a medication and these medications are stimulants. So it's so counterintuitive, right? Your brain is already firing. You have an already stimulated brain. Now to suppress that or to bring it in control, they're not giving you a depressant, but they're again giving you stimulants. So what they say is it increases the baseline of dopamine so that there is more dopamine available in your brain for you to get that satisfaction of doing a reward and things like that. So
what are these medicines supposed to do? वो ऐसे absorb कर लेते हैं वो extra dopamine?
Medicine, what they say is they make sure that the neurotransmitters that are being secreted, they stay there for a longer time. It's like there's more, I don't know, maybe they make them stay there for a longer time or maybe they make them like secrete more neurotransmitters. I don't know what is the mechanism of action. But the whole goal is for your pleasure centers, for those receptors to have enough juice, to absorb so that because what is ADHD, right? When you characterize it, it's generally characterized by restlessness. It's generally characterized by blatant insubordination, like blatant disregard to rules, not fitting in, these are all external labels that I'm trying to tell you. And as we talk more, we will explore how all of this pans out internally. It's a developmental disorder characterized by like some fuck up in your brain that results in, some people say, deficiency of attention, but I would not call it that way. It's not like we are not attentive. There is no regulation aspect to that attention. How people joke about we all are gay, we all are a little gay, right? Like whenever I talk about ADHD, especially the symptoms, it's like, hey, I'm forgetful. Hey, I lack executive function, which means I don't know, I have 10 tasks, I don't know which one to prioritize. I'll always pick the one that I will enjoy the most, but probably maybe for the organization that I work, that's not the most important one, right? All of this looks insubordination, right? Like all of this looks, makes you stand out from the neurotypical crowd, right? When I say neurotypical, it's people who don't have these conditions, people whose brains had the time, space, luxury to develop the way nature intended it to be.
So could you just summarize key symptoms exactly क्या होते हैं?
Symptoms is inattentiveness, extremely restless mind. It's like you feel you have a Ferrari engine in a Maruti Suzuki car, right? Like how would it be? You're always driving at 30. I wouldn't say of course forgetfulness. There's a different reason for it. It's not like we forget things. If I ever say I forgot something, Aditi, like I'm lying. So most people have like a very good memory, but they struggle with prioritization. I know I had a lunch meeting with you, I remember it, but I also saw that my computer desk is dirty. I will probably go start cleaning it. When I'm doing that, I'll realize that, oh, I don't have colon in the house. Now I'll go to Blinkit to order some colon. But on the way to Blinkit, I will open, Samay Raina launched a new episode of Latent. Now I'm on YouTube. While I'm watching that, who knows? So you see, you have 10 tasks, right? And this is what neurotypical people don't struggle with. Like, I was giving you the being gay example, right? Like, we all say, oh, we all are a little gay. But no, that's not how it works. A gay person has his own struggles. The same way, yes, we all are forgetful at times. Yes, we all are inattentive at times, but a neurotypical person, when something is expected out of them, let's say you have to deliver a presentation by 10 a.m. tomorrow, right? So even though they are not interested in it, even though they can't pay attention to it, their brain has the executive function to adhere to those rules and meet that outcome. Whereas people who have ADHD or people who have autism, they struggle with this kind of prioritization. Because it's very hard to keep your focus on something that is not exciting for you, and other one is the conflict in relationships. That's where the conflict in people who you report to, like if you're a kid, you're gonna have issues with your teacher. If you're a grown-up adult, you're gonna have issues with your boss. Sometimes you are in position of power. What if you're VP of marketing, VP of sales, right? Now there are people who wake up in the morning, come to work looking up to you, right? You have reportees to you,
right?
But you are the one who are not able to get up, wake up, out of the bed in the morning. Now, how do you expect your team to show up to meetings on time and things like that? So,
how does this really manifest with both the genders? Do men react to it differently versus, let's say, how women would?
I think, like all lived experiences, things are going to be always harder for people who are marginalized groups in any manner, right? Like if you're a Dalit, if you're a woman, if you're a kid, life is already hard for you. On top of that, you add this icing, of learning disorder or a developmental disorder. Imagine you're a Dalit kid, has no access to education, upar se you have dyslexia. So that one moment probably somebody puts you in a school, the letters are floating, right? Again, we live in a real world and there's socio-economic lens to everything that we do, men and women. And as it's always been very apparent to history that issues pertaining to women are not prioritized a lot in research. This is what I'm saying, right? The diagnostic criteria has, for almost 1900 to the 80s, has always been about this restlessness and things like that. So it means only men were diagnosing. It means probably the people who were sitting in the room who created that DSM manual, who created the criteria for evaluating this disease were probably just men, right? So you see how there is a systemic issue to it. The life of women, again culturally, because we're in India, we'll talk about India. So culturally, I think, given the way our country is, or I'm not just talking about India, this Southeast Asia, women work really, really hard.
Right.
And that's a recipe for burnout, right? And especially when you're in a culture where there is no awareness of mental health, forget knowing neurodivergence and fuck all of that. Just knowing that I'm depressed. It's very sad, but that's how it is. Unfortunately, like I spoke about being restlessness, inattentiveness. In a male kid, it's very easy to spot that because that kid is jumping here and there, creating nuisance in the class. So there, even if the teacher is not equipped to identify this, she will be frustrated to take the kid, hold his ear, take the principal. Now, who knows, maybe the principal understands psychology and say, hey, you know what, Amit has ADHD. That doesn't happen in case of women because women are expected to live in a particular way, right?
That's what was making me also think, right? Like growing up, for example, I have not seen a lot of women जो कि बहुत restless थी, because अगर आप उनको restless देखते भी हो तो like that is something that is looked down upon, and everyone would tell her that hey, like शांति से बैठो, चुपचाप बैठो, and that's the definition or the image of what a good girl is supposed to be like sitting somewhere quietly, serene, not talking much, not raising her voice, stuff like that, right? So I'm just assuming कि for women ये कितना ज़्यादा difficult होगा just to even diagnose or recognize कि
and there is research that says that women underreport their symptoms when they are in when they get, forget women who are not getting access to mental health. Even women who get access to mental health underreport their symptoms, and men overreport their symptoms. So the probability of you getting a proper ADHD diagnosis is much higher if you're a man. If you're a woman, the diagnosis can tend to be like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, so like you rightly said, it manifests, all the external restlessness that you see in a male kid is internalized in case of women. All of this restlessness manifests very internally, and now you grow up with a sense of doubt, you think you're probably not good enough, you're probably not woman enough, and eating disorders, sexually transmitted diseases, because you're so impulsive, you're so, your worldview is so fucked up, so you might make some impulsive decisions that may probably give you a STD. Addiction is huge. So in men, because I'll tell you why this happens, right? You don't fit in. Something is fundamentally wrong with you, you know that. And the whole reason why we are shooting this episode is just to give that perspective to people, ki, hey, you know what, I do feel this. Do I have ADHD? And asking such questions is important. Who knows, maybe you don't have ADHD, maybe you have high functioning depression, you never know. But at least having that conversation, seeking help. I'll tell you, and unless you find an ecosystem or just a system that helps you, that supports you, what's going to happen is you're going to create mechanisms for yourself that will help you, and these are called coping mechanisms. And more often than not, these coping mechanisms are going to be unhealthy, like substance, drinking, pot, like fleeting relationships, right? Like, and all of this is recipe for you inviting trouble, right? Like, this is why I talk a lot about Gabor Mate, right? Like, he brings this concept of compassionate inquiry. Also, people with ADHD interrupt other people, they overspeak, they digress. So it's going to be very evident in this episode, but I think you can pull me back wherever I'm being inconsistent.
I've known you for like the last 4 years now, and always known this about you. But तुम बताओ कि when was the first time जब तुम्हें realize हुआ कि you have ADHD, and how did you go about that journey?
It was not that easy, and इसीलिए तो I'm having this conversation with you, because it took me 13 mental health professionals to even get a remote idea that I could have. And even the 14th person, I went to that person saying that, hey, you know what, like maybe there could be a chance that I may have something like ADHD or something like that. Can I go through an assessment?
So it was you who...
The 14th person, yes.
Oh wow, okay.
And then after that also I've been like, probably after that I have been to 1 or 2 more people, and then finally I found somebody, with whom I've been for the last 4 years.
So was this an ADHD expert?
The whole point is you shouldn't be dependent on one person. You should have a panel, right? Like in my case, I have a psychiatrist who gives you who give you crutches, right? Until your plaster is healed or something like that. You need something immediately. You can't, a typical mental health professional will give you, say, hey, wake up at so, like take some fresh air, eat fruit, Not possible. It's very easy to say.
Right.
So that's where having a psychiatrist, because a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist will have the authority to prescribe you. Again, because मैं coach बोल रहा हूँ, तो this conversation, like probably 98% of Indians get excluded from this conversation the moment I say you should get a coach, because यहाँ पे लोगों को
कोच लेना मतलब बहुत लग्जरी.
Exactly. तुमको कोच का कॉन्सेप्ट अगर तुम्हें पता है तो तुम एलीट हो, right? हमारे यहाँ तो झापड़ पड़ता है ना, like if you don't, nobody thinks कि, oh, I should get a coach. But ideally have a panel, one friend that helps you with accountability, one friend who helps you with, like, I don't know, giving you mental stimulation, one psychiatrist who give you medicines, and a psychologist who helps you have regular conversations about how your life is going and things like that. But coming back, I think it's been a rough ride. I think I always knew there's something different with me. I knew it, but well before you realize you're different, the society, samaj, whatever you want to call it, puts a negative connotation to it, and that like I am different turns to a mental narrative that says मुझ में कुछ गलत है, मुझ में कुछ खोट, I'm a खोटासिक. So that's the issue. Your condition is not an issue. Right?
So did you feel that way right from your teenage years?
My first review in school was, ये बात क्यों नहीं करता? Right? Now imagine if I was rich, if my dad was Mahesh Bhatt, like in that conversation in UKG, everybody around would have probably guessed कि इसको कुछ, do they have any developmental condition? That conversation would have, that possibility would have existed.
For example, हमारे family में ये joke होता है कि लोग introvertism को नहीं समझते. People say कि तुम मुँह चोर हो.
या फिर डिसरेस्पेक्टफुल हो, बड़ों को वो इज्जत नहीं देते, like मंदबुद्धि, weird, chomu, like I don't know what's a word for weird, and I'm being honest, I've had friends who were autistic when I was a kid, and I thought they were weird, right? Because I thought I was normal. I thought I was
conditions you to believe.
So it takes a lot of. I was 28 when I realized there is nothing called normal. Like we all are fucked up. So imagine from 6 years, when probably that's when you have cognition of what is happening, what is being said to you, what is happening around you, as a kid also. From such a young age, if you're constantly hearing, there's a research, I think, I don't know if you can put that number somehow later, ki kids with ADHD and autism like grow up with like the amount of negative words that they keep hearing is much higher, the ratio, than a normal average kid. So
I can
when you're
imagine.
constantly being called lazy, kamchor, blah blah blah, you can grow up with a sense of incompetency. Like no matter
No matter how hard I
how
work,
hard I work.
I'll probably always be perceived that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also makes you question the, and see, you need to understand it's not just about you being lazy, it's about, I don't know, I don't know, probably people will cancel me if I take the example of PK, movies like PK, or there is this Netflix show called The Good Alien. Even though if you see the main characters are being, I think PK is a perfect example, we should talk about PK. The Amir Khan character has come from some different planet.
Yeah.
What is he struggling with? He's not struggling. He's struggling with the rules on the planet. Some guy says it's okay to wear shoes in the place of religion. Some guy says it's not okay. Somewhere alcohol is allowed. Somewhere it's haram. Right? There is no correct way of definition
There's no
to do
anything. Yeah.
because
There's no
a
right way.
neurotypical person will have 10 different points of view, and that person can contextually switch. You know, when I'm with you, I'll behave different way. When I'm with other people, you have that ability, right?
Right.
But when nature has taken away that ability from you, you struggle because, wait a second, yesterday you said I should write.
So are you saying that people don't have the ability to context switch that easily?
It's not context switching, it's confusing. कल ही तो आपने बोला था झूठ बोलना पाप है, अभी आपने उसको झूठ क्यों बोला कि आपने खाना खाया? Do you get it?
So is it more like
they're
black
very
and
logical. It's very like
black and white?
It's no black and white thinking. Yes, black and white thinking. Extremely black and white thinking. Either I am I'm awesome or I'm horrible, right? So black and white thinking is the exact word. Everything is a personal failure. Everything is a moral failure. मैं 10 minute office late पहुंचा, I feel like I'm a horrible person. You know.
Got it. So I want to go deeper into how has this affected your life, right? And we can talk about before and after, like before you actually got diagnosed with this. तो ये बताओ कि let's start with work. Like how did ADHD affect your work?
I don't know if I should give you this example on camera, but I think it's fine. There's this. Okay, I'll not tell you where, what company, nothing.
Sure.
There's this event that we're working on, and then my job was to assist the producer of the event. And because it was a conference, all the people who were coming on the stage were sending their decks to us 15 days before that, and we were supposed to look at them, correct, blah, blah. So I was given instruction that, hey, every time somebody mails me, you're supposed to download their attachment and keep it in a cloud folder. When the first email came, I was like, see, there are 20 people who are supposed to reply. If I do this and do it, again I have to do this for 20 people. May I as well wait till the last deadline, let them all respond, then I'm going to say download, put everything. Now, at that time, I didn't know a tool called WeTransfer. I always know Google Drive and things like that. I didn't know WeTransfer links expire in 4 days, 7 days, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Last day, when I sit and hit download, I was able to download whatever, but the first guy who sent me, I was not. And that guy was ex-Prime Minister of Greece, one of the decks that I had.
Right.
Now, if it is some product manager at Microsoft, I can go tell him, bro, I'm really sorry, I fucked up, I deleted. Now, how do you go to a ex-Prime Minister's office and tell them that we fucked up? So a lot of times it's, what black and white thinking makes you do is, like, you register one thing in your head, and it pans out in relationships as well. I don't know, the Rachel and Ross fight, like Rachel, I was on a break, right? And Ross's head is like, you can have sex with people when you're on a break. That's the, core belief you have. And we're on a break, like, for him it's very logical, like, but for Rachel, it's like, no, you were my boyfriend, we were together for 10 years.
How
like,
can you
we
just
broke
go
up
and have
5
sex?
minutes ago, like, how, right? So,
Yeah.
this disconnect between your understanding of the world and the world, of course, the world, this disconnect causes a lot of problems in
So, अभी आपको कभी ऐसा experience हुआ है कि जो आप symptoms बोल रहे थे initially, उसके basis पे आपके managers ने आपको misunderstood करा हो? For example, अगर आप late हो तो, have they ever come to this conclusion that, hey, this guy is not reliable or not dependable? Have you ever had moments like that?
I think my work has always saved my ass. I think all people, I think I'm not going to be politically correct here, all people with ADHD, autism, they're like, we are very particular about things. Things have to happen in a particular way. So I think because that amount of energy goes into creating an output, even though it's late, it has always saved my ass. So I think my reputation, I think right from day one is like, Akshay is late, but the output will be great. Of course, they're mad at me because I'm not, especially in corporate, and I've always been in startups. Startups, one trait that is always very valued is over communication. And especially if you're in a remote setup and things like that, it's,
people appreciate.
You cannot blame your managers for this, right? It's very natural to expect it, right? Because I can't see your face on Slack. It's just like, it's just a message, right? So, And I am not a over communicator, right? I am like, and especially if I get into a flow state, it's very difficult for me to see what's happening. Out of sight, out of mind. We all are like this. So if something is not in front of, and this is how it impacts relationships as well, right? Like if you are with your girlfriend or your partner, you are writing poems for them. You are fucking Javed Akhtar. But then the moment you are in different cities or things like that, you are not even thinking of them, and the other person can start thinking that does he like me? Their abandonment issues start kicking in. So my silence has always been misinterpreted, right? In my case, I'm not somebody. I've seen people in my career. I think some people are very good with updating the stakeholders on what is happening, and because of my ADHD, for me, what is important in life always getting shit done.
Right.
If you complete something, then you're respected.
Yeah.
Right? You're worthy only when you're able to do things. And now for me, there is no pride in coming and telling you like, guys, we did this, we did that, we did this, and none of this worked, and we'll see how can we do it better. For me, it's like it has to happen. There is no losing. There is no secondary outcome. So I think that black and white thinking has gotten me into trouble, because especially like when you're a middle manager, when you're an executive, when you're in leadership roles, I think outcomes, of course, they do matter. But I think in the larger scheme of things,
also matters.
What is leadership? Leadership is you telling your overlords every day that we did this today. This happened, and this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Right? Whether leadership, it was good, whether it was bad, whether it was good for the none of that matters. Right? In the long run.
In the long run. Leadership is a lot about communicating and communicating.
Today you may be happy. I can tell you that, hey, this fuck up. You may be angry at me today. You may be sad. But that's where it ends. That's what it is. Right?
But the trust gets built like that.
So I was
as long as you keep communicating.
Because now you have a sense of what's happening. Even though the outcome is not your favorable, maybe I'm managing your social media account and people are like shit posting about you. Right? But the fact that now I have two options: either be scared about it and go fix it and blah blah blah, or come tell you that, hey, you know what, I wrote this. I wrote a Diwali post in your name. I wrote something about crackers and the whole like everybody's shitting on you, right? Like having the balls. And especially if you're somebody who's always been told that you're not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. Like one mistake, I'm gonna fucking drop you. By the time you asked about diagnosis, right? By the time you get your diagnosis, all core beliefs about you are already frozen in your head. You already believe you're useless. You already believe you're incompetent. Also, my personal experiences, I feel कि आपके लाइफ में जितने मॉमी डैडी इश्यूज होते हैं ना, वो आप अपने लाइफ के अथॉरिटी चाइल्डहुड मॉमी डैडी इश्यूज को आप अपने लाइफ के प्रेजेंट अथॉरिटी फिगर्स पे प्रोजेक्ट करते हो. तो अगर आप स्कूल में हो तो आप PhD कर रहे हो तो आपके गाइड पे प्रोजेक्ट करोगे. If you are VP marketing, you will do it for the CMO. So that's how it is.
So आपने वर्क के बारे में बात करी, but what about, you also spoke a little bit about your romantic relationships, but what about relations with family? ADHD ने इन सबको कैसे affect करा है?
I think every now and then I keep having this conversation. I think my parents now understand that I don't enjoy talking a lot, but there were phases where when I get very hyper focused on something, I tend to forget what's happening around me, which also means I'm not calling my parents expect me to call them once a day and ask them, hey, how are you, khana khaya, that's it, that's all they expect. But sometimes, and so look at the other person's perspective, right? This is the bare minimum I'm expecting from my son, my partner. Tumko itna bhi nahi ho raha.
Right.
That's how their narrative would be.
Right.
For me, it's like, like if you are in front of me, I would probably be writing poetry about how beautiful you are. But if you're not, then this impacts. Like I said, the silence gets misinterpreted. I always have, every now and then I've had very strong conversations with my sister where she thinks that, hey, तुमको याद भी है
that I exist.
एक मेरी बहन है, तुमको याद भी है कि तुम किसी के बेटे हो, तुमको याद भी है तुम्हारा गांव है, कब आओगे, right? Like and very recently, like I was looking for a new job and I had become that Manoj from 12th pass, ना, तो जब तक नौकरी नहीं मिलेगा घर नहीं जाऊँगा. So, because it took me some time, I was not talking to my parents. I was not. Of course, there was guilt, shame, and all of that. That's separate. But there's also my autism because invested in something. It's not कि मुझे तुम्हारा याद नहीं आ रहा है. It's not कि I'm not thinking about you. Like, it's just that it doesn't occur. Like, I don't know. I hope more and more people understand this. And lately, at least, मेरे जो close friends हैं, I think they have understood this about me. Now my friends ask me, hey, do you have the energy to go out? Like, I think they've become more sensitive towards my energy levels. And we can talk about energy levels. I think that's very important for people who have ADHD is to understand that, and for anybody, that you wake up with finite amount of energy and make sure how to get the most out, how to get the most of it done or out of it. Yeah.
ये सब चल रहा था, this is how this was happening in your work, आपके relationships में. Then you got diagnosed.
Yeah.
And थोड़ी बहुत relief
Yes.
शायद उसे मिली
I was
होगी,
liberated,
right?
like,
You
yeah,
felt
yeah,
liberated.
yeah.
उसके बाद once you accepted it, once you came to terms with it, तो उसके बाद how did you build systems to now
Systems,
deal
yeah.
with it?
So, like you said, I think even though I asked, the diagnosis was very, very, very liberating. Good thing is I was in Bangalore. Bangalore has a lot of these psychiatrists, mental health professionals who've practiced in the UK and who've come to India. उनके resources, उनका planning बहुत अच्छा है. तो people like I have all the empathy जो मुझे मिला है लोगों से जो sensitive, जो like any doctor who's been sensitive towards people with ADHD and autism, like I've seen that they've come from the practice and come from the UK. So maybe it is the NHS. So yeah, like I said, I think initially the medication helped. I think because I was consulting wrong doctors, I was misdiagnosed with anxiety, then the medication is different. I was misdiagnosed with depression, that was different. Some like, I don't know, because I zone out, some woman diagnosed me with dissociative disorders. And this is the problem with that stupid DSM book, okay? Like, you take that book, walk into Toit, सबको एक diagnosis देके आ जाओगे बाहर आप, unfortunately. But what knowing helps me is, for the first time in my life, I felt, वो जो साल भर का कूट के guilt, shame वगैरह जो अंदर भरा था, I think all of that vaporized in a second. I'll be very honest with you, because for the first time there was a scientific explanation
to your behavior,
to my behavior.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm not weird. Like, there are millions of people like me. You just see, right? What I just spoke about is a system. If an American spoke about this, Americans being so good at selling, they will just turn everything into a small little module. What I just said is a system. You realizing that, hey, this triggers me. Be a little mindful. I think once you explore therapy and things like that, people will like checking in with your emotion. Am I angry right now? Like, am I sad right now? Like, you realize a lot of physical sensation in your body, but giving names to it. I think we should talk about feelings wheel. Like, oh my God, it's a huge circle. And unfortunately, like, you know what is a feeling wheel का job is to help you. आपको मुझे गुस्सा आ रहा है, but you go to feeling wheel की गुस्सा is a secondary symptom. What is the primary symptom? I'm ashamed. I'm hurt. Like, for that it is. And there are marketers these days posting feelings wheel saying that, you can pick emotions here and you can write LinkedIn posts. Like such blatant wrong use of mental health resources. So yeah, I think being good with your emotions, knowing that feelings, emotions are separate things, knowing what primary emotion क्या होता है, secondary emotion क्या होता है. Generally गुस्सा, लोग बोलते हैं मुझे गुस्सा आया है. Like, there is nothing called gussa. Gussa is
a
symptom.
way of expression.
It's a symptom, right? It's a secondary emotion. But if you go to feelings wheel, you'll see that, I'm disgusted. I was hurt. I was belittled. So when you do that it's like exercise again, right? Building that muscle, building that emotional resilience. So this is where you need different systems. So of course, life में you still have to wake up, Monday morning office जाना पड़ेगा, तुम्हारा boss रहेगा, deliverables होंगे. But while doing all of this, can you be more mindful? What is triggering me? What is we are very oversensitive, right? Like sometimes extremely cold temperature in your office can be very stimulating. Loud noises can be very stimulating. Most people who have means to resources, you will see them with noise cancelling headphones. Like I spend crazy, it's called ADHD tax. When you have to, because you're forgetting bills, like I have EMIs to pay. Every time I forget, to pay, and then there's a 700 rupee penalty for a NACH bounce.
Oh, damn.
Every time. I know this penalty is going to come, but I still forget, and so because you are born a particular way, you have to pay extra money to the world to, enjoy the privilege. So they call it the ADHD tax.
So if you have to summarize, let's say for someone who is dealing with this right now, who already knows they have ADHD and what should they do, then what are 2-3 actionables that they can do?
First thing is build a support system for yourself.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether you're going to Deepika Padukone's therapist who would probably charge you 30,000 for a session, or a fresh graduate of Nimhan's, who's going to charge you 1,500 per session, or Nimhan's telecaller. God, everybody should, guys, you should flash this number, on screen. There is a toll-free number that, by Nimhan's, a bunch of, and I spoke to them. Yeah, I never trusted that number. I've never called that number personally before, but recently I met their team. I asked them, what is the minimum qualifying criteria for somebody to pick up the phone? They say MSc Psychology. So that's a good thing. And you can say, I want a Rajasthani therapist. There will be somebody who will talk to you in Marwadi, right? So first thing is identify what resource works for you. If you're wealthy, if you have means to do, find an expert. If you're not, take help of things like Nimhan's and things like that. Read more. Unfortunately, one of the reasons I agree to come and do this conversation is because जो भी literature है ADHD और neurodivergence के बारे में वो सब is by गोरे लोग for गोरे लोग, right? So there's very
so there's nothing that is in the
very
context
few. There are some creators emerging. I see a couple of them on Instagram, but I think again they are also trying to jump the content ladder and they're like आज मैं therapist के पास जा रही थी, आज उसने मुझे ये prescription दिया. So they're trying to document their journey, which is a good thing. This is what a lot of American people are doing. So yeah, I hope more and more Indians realize.
So coming back, like what were the 3 actionables? One was to build a support system, understand
Support system, yes.
what system works for you.
Work for you.
Any other tips, actionable tips that you have?
Be good with like emotional management. I don't know, sounds like a jargon, but it's very important. Knowing what you're feeling right now, and believe me, we all are Indians. We are horrible at it. तुम दुखी हो तुम्हें पता नहीं है तुम दुखी हो, तुम खुश हो तुम्हें पता नहीं है तुम खुश हो. So I think just being good at labeling what emotions you have can be amazing, life changing. You will not believe me, because sometimes because once you see, it's like you know all the feelings. You know, I feel a pit in my stomach. Okay, that's all you know cognitively. Now if you associate a feeling to that, oh, I'm scared. So the next time you feel that pit in your stomach, you know you're scared. Now you ask yourself, why am I scared? I'm just sitting on a bench with a friend having a conversation. Then why am I feeling pit in my stomach? Then you're like, it gives you room for, doing a lot of inner work, doing a little bit of introspection. Yeah, having a system, that is the second thing. Third thing is build awareness with your loved ones, like help them understand your condition. Right? If you are a young kid born in Odisha and your parents were, didn't get English education, don't understand what psychology is, how can they be sensitive towards something that you have just discovered? Going through, right?
Makes
and generally it's genetic. If you have autism or ADHD, there's a good chance that one of your parent or either of them has it. Right? So it can't be an isolated experience. Like probably they also have had very similar experience, but कोई था नहीं उनके लाइफ में उन्हें बताने के लिए कि ये है. तो like so build your systems, be emotional regulations, be better at labeling your emotions, knowing what I'm feeling with. And third one is build a peer group, a community, people who confide in them, tell them how difficult is it for you. Sometimes not, as a marketer, I'm a marketer, like nothing in this world cannot be solved with words. Words are very powerful.
Right.
Sometimes just going and telling your boss that, hey, you know what, the sunlight from this window really bothers me and that's why I'm not able to be productive.
Right.
Going to admin, telling them that, hey, can you please reduce the AC temperature by 3 more degrees, or telling your co-workers, on day one that, there was this guy I used to work for, he had a document.
How to work with me,
right?
I've heard about that,
yeah. How to work with me. So I think if maybe it's too late for you to change all of this in your current organization, but let's say when you move to a new one, can you, first day, say, do your introduction, say hi to people and put this document saying that, don't say, hey Akshay, okay, say, hey Akshay, do you have the password for LinkedIn, right? Because just hey Akshay can be very triggering for what is it? Hey Akshay, are you fired? Hey Akshay, you're an asshole. What is it? So a lot of time be a little more mindful about, and especially if people in positions of power are looking at this, even they can look up. The reason why I've never told my bosses that I have ADHD or autism is because I never wanted my bosses to Google what is ADHD and autism. Because the moment they do, all these stupid articles pop up and they say like, oh, do daily check-ins with them. Oh, ask them more frequently where the work is. I never wanted them to interfere more, because of their because of what resource they consume.
But did you ever have a chat with them? जैसे आप बोल रहे हो भी कि अपने loved ones को educate करना है. Did you always have a chat with your reporting managers?
I think it's again privilege, maybe I had, because of the very nature of my work. I think I've always worked in startup, flat structures where the management or leadership was very immediately accessible. But what if you're in TCS and you're stuck with a toxic boss?
Yeah.
Now, because management, leadership, it's all about those. So I don't have a better word for this. They're called microcosms. It's like a small ecosystem. It's your team, right? So if you have a boss who is fun, who is sensitive, who understands mental health, who also does self-work. Like other day I was talking to my boss and was I agitated? Right? Look at that question. That's so much of self-awareness. Coming out of a situation and thinking about it in third person, saying that, hey, did I look agitated? That kind of inquiry. I think being more mindful about, again, don't overdo it, because that's what you're doing right now. But doing it from an informed place can really, really help.
तो अब मेरे पास कुछ ऐसे बहुत ही से rapid fire short questions हैं.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of this, so we can just quickly sort of, skim through them. How do you think ADHD has impacted your self-esteem?
Terrible, like in terrible ways. I didn't have one until 2 years ago. Like I think, yeah, this non-existent self-esteem. I was a people pleaser. Didn't look like that, but I think I was.
Or let's say when you were in situations when you felt like you wanted to do something but your inner voice was telling you can't. So उस time आप कैसे उसको handle करते थे?
I think today, आज मैं शायद कुछ अलग करता. Like I said, I would go talk to the person because these days I'm realizing, it's not outcomes are not binary. It's either मेरे को कल छुट्टी नहीं मिलेगा या फिर कल छुट्टी मिलेगा. ऐसा नहीं. Sometimes you should go talk. Having uncomfortable conversations is very. I think my last year was that. I think I've had so many uncomfortable conversations. Scary, but there's something very beautiful waiting for you at the end of it. I think एक दो बार कर लो अच्छा लगेगा and then you will know कि it's like ठंडा पानी का shower. First mug is very hard. After that it gets better.
कभी आपको लोगों ने ऐसा feel करा है कि because of the symptoms of ADHD, were you ever made to feel like you were a burden?
Was I a burden? I think in school I might have felt that.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you why. I come across as somebody who's very extrovert, well-read, and I come across as a smart person. Well, whether am I all of this? 2 years ago, I would say I don't know. Now I know, ठीक है, like इतना भी, I'm not that dumb. But I think I've always felt like I was a disappointment when in academic settings because I'm always asking eccentric questions to the professor. I am holding them accountable. Sir, this is not -6, this is +6, and all. So when you throughout the year, when you are doing all of this, automatically in the mind of the professor, they expect that, hey, ये बच्चा, he's a smart kid. He will मेरा नाम रोशन करेगा. But then every time when the results come, my my CET scores were not satisfactory. So I think nobody's ever come and tell me that, hey Akshay, you disappointed me. But I think after I have never gone back to my favorite teachers. After the
report cards.
Yeah, I was like, I loved them, they loved me only until the report card. After that, even though I'm sure teachers are not that judgmental, but I think I myself used to distance themselves from them because I know I was never good enough for them.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you already talked about feeling that you were lazy initially or you were irresponsible. I'm sure that dialogue has changed abhi tak, right? So what is your new dialogue about yourself now in those moments?
In my head?
Yeah, in your head. Let's say now when you get delayed.
Now I'm more compassionate. I'm like, hota hai. I think early hota rehta. It's okay, it happens. There are times when I'm in the parking lot and I would have forgotten my phone and I'm already late and all of that. I think hota hai, but
उस moment पे what is your inner dialogue?
Not inner dialogue. पहले जितना harsh नहीं है, obviously. The voice in my head is, we call it the inner critic voice. Everybody has one. Yeah. And taming that voice, dealing with that voice is a skill altogether. It's a separate episode altogether. You'll get a psychologist. But yeah, I think that voice is a lot more softer now. It doesn't tell me that I'm useless, I'm a burden. You're lazy. Girlfriend doesn't love you, the world doesn't love you. ऐसे नहीं है, lazy नहीं. I think I want to talk a little about the energy concept, that understanding that I wake up with fixed, not time, a fixed amount of energy, realizing what is that energy for you. It could be 6 hours of classes, 4 hours of meetings. Knowing that upper threshold and being rigid about it, because that is a system that will work for you. If you say, other day there was sports day in my office and everybody was forcing me to play, but I know that if I play today, next 3 days gone. Just knowing those limitations, knowing your physical limitations. A lot of ADHD and autism
physical along with emotional.
Emotional limitations we all have. I'm saying people with ADHD and autism, it's very physical. You can't get out of the bed. You will lose your job if you don't get it. A neurotypical person also, nobody likes their job. Everybody hates it. But they still, you see Mumbai local, people are like going to work every day. Right? They don't have a choice. None of us have a choice, but you know what's the consequence, and when you have that disregard for consequence, that's when it's a disorder, right? Like, मुझे पता है if I have one more peg, my wife is gonna fight with me, right? But you can't control it. You're gonna have it, and like disregard for the consequences.
तो अभी तक हमने मतलब जितनी भी बातें करी वो that was more on the negative side of ADHD, right? Yes. But now if we flip the coin, right? आपको क्या लगता है what is that superpower that ADHD gives you?
I think extremely random thinking, maybe. I have an eidetic memory, which means...
What does that mean?
Eidetic, it's like borderline photographic memory. If I read something, I will never forget it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
I also have a learning disorder that prohibits me from reading. So it's a gift and a curse, or as I call it, a curse, But this is just me, but you know, a lot of people, and this is what I was finding, right? Like, especially in countries like India, Southeast Asian cultures, what happens is it's a spectrum. Nobody ADHD, autism, neurodivergence is not a condition. It's a spectrum. Diabetes में spectrum थोड़ी होता है.
Right.
तुमको either type 1 है, type 2 है.
Right.
That's it. But here it's a fucking spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think the world or Indian society को पता है कि dysfunctional autism, like people who are on the extreme end, you know, there's no cognition, where you cannot talk, like when it's very apparent, right? When it's very visceral, when you can, like the kids who got featured in Tare Zameen Par, if I have to be that blunt, right? When it's at that level, people are easily to, like they can spot it. But when you're a high functioning autistic person, people in case of me, and a lot of my friends, like, you know, all these kids who end up in IIT, you know, JW, who end up cracking, you look at them, look at their social skills, right? Because when you're in the high functioning, when you're in the low functioning side, you will get cornered. You're like, mand buddhi hai, chutiya hai. You'll just make them outcast. When you're high functioning, there is support. You know, it's like, aur karo.
Right.
You know, isko IIT mein dalo, isko science mein dalo, doctor banao. And these kids are almost gifted, right? Like what you said, like this amount of memory, cognition, it can almost look gifted. And whenever they find children gifted, they put them in extremely competent academic settings.
Right.
And for some kids, it works out.
Yeah.
For some kids, that's the only thing that works. All they know is getting good grades. But then, what about play? What about talking to friends? What about being friends with people? What about sharing? So when these people grow up and they come into a brutal capitalistic world, like, you know, corporate and things like that, that's when these people start struggling. And all of this leads to things like like isolation, feeling I'm not good enough, addiction, extremely risky behavior, or unhealthy coping mechanisms. There are people who pick socially acceptable things, okay, to channelize all this energy and do it, like beat the shit out of it, like knitting, painting, what is that, crocheting and things like that. They pick up hobbies. But why? Because this is acceptable socially, right? If you're smoking all day, like if you're drinking all day, it's not acceptable. But if you're doing, there are people who do it in extremely unhealthy ways. So,
but coming back, what, like you said, one of the superpowers of ADHD is the power it gives you to be so random.
I think we're very good at spotting patterns. I think extremely logical, and I think this connecting thing helps you connect random concepts, and that's the reason people like us thrive in creative environments, right? Like, what is creativity? Creativity is just about finding patterns in two more and distinct things, just mixing them. A lot of times, what is music? A lot of times it's like something from some song, something from some song, but somebody had the vision to mix these two things and come up with something else. I think that's all creativity is. Now, to what extent you are able to do that defines whether you are A.R. Rahman or you're a Badshah.
So before we started recording, आपने burnout के बारे में काफ़ी सारी बातें करी, right? So one of the things you told me that struck a chord was कि ADHD लोगों को बहुत ज़्यादा burnout होता है. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Why do you think that is?
So because you're growing up with this general sense of being incompetent, not enough, and things like that, but you're also gifted in ways to be good at solving problems and things like that. So generally, if you see most neurodivergent people, they end up in roles like sales, where there is constant high of a rejection or a success, or in creative roles, or in agencies and things like that, right? Now, I spoke about two words called guilt and shame. Guilt is a external phenomena. Bahar se, like only I can make you feel guilty. Like, it's very external. Matlab, you feel it, but the trigger is external. Shame is something internal. Shame is something that you believe. You think you're not good enough. So I think the more I've seen, it's shame that is the driver for burnout, because you think कि मेरा पहला job है, या फिर like I don't know, like Deepak से मैं हार जाऊँगा, something like that. Like something, Deepak will get the Rookie of the Year award, like something, and you internalize that, and you overdo what you're doing, right? Like it's like without check engine light, we all have check engine light in our car, right? I mean, what happens when you ignore that light? Your engine breaks down. So burnout is all about that.
So because ADHD people,
there's this additional burden on you to prove the world that, hey, I am good enough, or you can't, like, I'm also important. You see a lot of people, like, people call me funny. I'm not funny. It's just like a tool I use to make sure that people don't abandon me. So yeah, like that's that's how it is.
Some quick tips. मान लो मैं एक पेरेंट हूँ और मेरे को लगता है मेरे चाइल्ड को शायद ADHD है, मेरे को क्या करना चाहिए?
हर बीमारी की तरह आपको डॉक्टर के पास आना चाहिए, बट थोड़ा आप रिसर्च कर लो. ऑल्सो अपर्णा, यू कैन रीच आउट टू अपर्णा. शी हैज़ अ ग्रुप. They have a separate group for parents as well. There's a Telegram group dedicated for parents with neurodivergent kids.
But agar I'm asking in terms of my parenting, so is there a different way I should parent my kid?
Of course. I mean, see, the thing is, yeah, just knowing that your kid is, there's nothing wrong with your kid. Yeah, normal बच्चा है वो, बच्चे गलतियाँ करेंगे. I think just knowing कि अगर आपका बेटा audio is a visual learner, is a auditory learner, you know, as a parent you have इतना time है आपके पास अपने बच्चे के लर्निंग स्टाइल्स वगैरह को सीखो एंड क्रिएट एन एटमॉस्फेयर फॉर हिम दैट बिकम्स अ मल्टीप्लायर, यू नो, जो उनके टैलेंट को, यू नो, उभरे. लाइक म्यूजिक सिखाओ. अगेन, डोंट फोर्स देम, डोंट टीच इट टू देम सो दैट वो सारेगामापा लिटिल चैम्प्स में आए, बट डू इट सो दैट बिकम्स अ वे ऑफ क्रिएटिव एक्सप्रेशन फॉर देम. मजे कराओ यार बच्चों को.
ठीक है. एनीथिंग स्पेसिफिकली जो कि एक टीचर को फॉलो करना चाहिए एक्सेप्ट व्हाट यू सेड? आई
एम अज्यूमिंग if you're a teacher you are probably trained कि कैसे identify करते हैं, but again
let's assume that they are not.
See, if you're a caring teacher, if you care about this concept, maybe see if you can lobby for a school counselor तुम्हारे स्कूल में. अगर गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में हो तो लॉबी नहीं कर सकते तो देखो क्या once
मान लो मैं स्कूल के पास नहीं है ये सब रिसोर्सेज, तो
YouTube इतना गंजी चुड़ैल के वीडियो मत देखो YouTube पे. सर्च करो what is ADHD in adolescents, kids, blah blah blah, read about it and go inform your kids.
In terms of how I am, let's say, teaching the kid, what should be the takeaway कि मेरे को उस बच्चे के साथ compassionate होना चाहिए. Basically जो आपने parenting के लिए advice दी, I'm assuming कि as a teacher भी मेरे को वही सब follow करना चाहिए, right?
हाँ, and if I took you back in time to my classroom, you would only find empty pages in my books. You know, I'll write 2 pages, empty 3 pages. These are all the pages that I left where I couldn't catch up, and I said I will come back to these pages. Never came back. So a lot of times I used to, for me, I have to understand the whole concept. If I can't visualize something, it doesn't exist. Like, can you run a study group for neurodivergent kids? Can you know, prepare better notes for them? Can you prepare audio lectures for them? Or forget everything, can you send them a YouTube playlist of chapter 1 that covers the fundamental things from chapter 1, so that तुम कल स्कूल आने से पहले तुमने सब देख लिया है. So a little bit of support and guidance on that front, because they are very smart, they will pick things up. You just have to show them the way, be the compass for them.
Okay.
You know? Employer is tricky, because the moment capitalism comes into picture, it's tricky, because like a lot of times I have 100 issues with employers, but then if I ran a business, even I would do the same things, because at the end of the day it's economy, right? So
it's very goal
outcome oriented. But can you identify the strengths of these people, take away the red tape and bureaucracy around them, you know? Can you give them an environment where they can creatively express, you know? Can you change their KRAs, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm not saying रमेश के लिए 10 है और इसके लिए आप 8 रखो. I'm not asking that. I'm saying can it be like, you know, 5 articles for Ramesh but 20 LinkedIn articles for the ADHD guy? Like, can you modify KRAs and KPIs in such a way that caters to their strengths? You know, I think it comes down to the manager. Like, I think play to their strengths. I think they are extremely creative. See, can you make things more flexible? Like,
okay, that's fair.
Or even having an appraisal. For me, sitting in a closed room face to face gives me anxiety. So maybe I'll not be honest with you about my accomplishments this year, because I'm just busy managing my energy, just sitting in front of you, right? Like, I'm complying to that. So maybe have your appraisal meeting like this in an open space. So such small accommodations you can make. Can you give them remote work? Can you let them work hybrid? You know, things like that. So play to their strengths.
I think to conclude this segment, you already spoke about the WhatsApp group. कोई और resources हैं जो लोग?
I'm happy to, like, I can share you a list of things. You can put it in descriptions. And there's a girl called Jen has ADHD. There are a lot of, I mean, if you Google ADHD, there are a lot of white creators that come. Unfortunately, there aren't many in India. If I could be wrong about it, I didn't find anybody during my journey. But if there are great creators who are creating content in this space, please reach out to me. We would be more than happy to promote your work and make sure that it reaches our followers. But yeah, we are the first one, so yeah, we will be the biggest one. So yeah,
I think we are done.